In the sacred canyons where ancient spirits dwell, true love transcends all boundaries. When two different worlds collide, only understanding can heal the wounds of the past. The dusty streets of San Angelo stretched before Captain David Roston as he dismounted from his weary horse. 5 years with the 7th Cavalry had carved deep lines around his blue eyes, but his uniform still bore the proud insignia of a man who'd served with honor. The Texas sun beat down mercilessly as he adjusted his campaign hat and surveyed the familiar yet changed frontier town. Wooden buildings lined the main street, their weathered facades telling stories of survival in this harsh land. "Haven't seen hide nor hair of your brother in near 3 months," said the postmaster, adjusting his spectacles. "Last letter came from somewhere near Blue Canyon, way out past the Comanche lands." David's heart sank as he held the worn envelope. James had written about geological formations and strange mineral deposits, but his handwriting seemed hurried, almost fearful. The townspeople spoke in hushed tones about mysterious lights dancing in the canyon at night and travelers who'd vanished without a trace. At the Golden Dollar Saloon, David nursed a whiskey and listened to the local gossip. "There's talk of an Indian girl," whispered the bartender, a grizzled man with silver hair. "Appears near the canyon like a ghost, they say. Beautiful as moonlight, but wild as the wind." The other patrons nodded knowingly, some crossing themselves. David felt a chill despite the warm evening air. His brother's disappearance seemed connected to something far more dangerous than simple geological survey work. Manuel Vasquez, a weathered Mexican guide with knowing eyes, reluctantly agreed to lead David to Blue Canyon. "Es un lugar sagrado, señor," he warned, shaking his head. "The Comanche, they guard it with their lives. Many spirits walk there at night." David counted out gold coins, his determination unwavering. "I'll pay double your usual rate, Manuel. My brother's life may depend on it." The guide's calloused hands trembled slightly as he pocketed the money, already regretting his decision to venture into sacred territory. Moonlight crept silently through the sagebrush, her moccasined feet making no sound on the rocky ground. From her hidden perch above Blue Canyon, she watched the white men's campfires flicker like fallen stars. Her father, Chief White Eagle, had forbidden the tribe from approaching the sacred canyon, but she could not ignore the desecration of their ancestral burial grounds. The spirits of her people whispered warnings in the wind, and the sacred stones that had protected their tribe for generations were disappearing one by one. The knowledge of healing herbs flowed through Moonlight's veins like the blood of her ancestors. Her grandmother, Star Woman, had taught her the ancient ways before crossing over to the spirit world. "The earth speaks to those who listen," the elder had said, pressing dried sage into the young woman's hands. Now, as Moonlight prepared her medicine bundle, she felt the weight of responsibility. The blue-eyed cavalry officer she'd glimpsed near the canyon stirred something unfamiliar in her heart, a feeling both thrilling and terrifying. Chief White Eagle's weathered face showed deep concern as he addressed his council. "The white men grow bolder each day. They take our sacred stones and disturb the resting places of our ancestors." His daughter's rebellious spirit reminded him of his own youth, but these were dangerous times. "No one must go near the canyon," he commanded, his voice carrying the authority of generations. Yet he knew Moonlight's determined nature would not be easily swayed by his words, no matter how stern his warning. That night, Moonlight defied her father's orders and ventured toward the canyon's edge. The moon cast silver shadows across the ancient petroglyphs, and she could feel the restless spirits of her people calling out for justice. In the distance, she saw the lonely figure of the cavalry officer examining the rock formations by lamplight. Something about his careful, respectful manner told her he was different from the other white men who had violated their sacred ground. Destiny seemed to be pulling them together across the cultural divide that separated their worlds. Elizabeth Gray stepped down from the dusty stagecoach, her practical traveling dress and sturdy boots marking her as different from the typical frontier women. The Harvard University credentials in her leather satchel had opened doors that remained closed to most women of her time, but she still faced skeptical stares from the men of San Angelo. The Smithsonian Institution had sent her to study the ancient petroglyphs reported in Blue Canyon, but the hostile glances reminded her that proving her competence would be an uphill battle in this untamed land. In her hotel room at the Prairie Inn, Elizabeth carefully examined the geological notes left by James Roston. His detailed sketches of unusual rock formations and mineral deposits suggested discoveries far more significant than simple survey work. The handwriting grew increasingly excited as he described finding what appeared to be an ancient burial chamber filled with ceremonial artifacts. This could rewrite our understanding of pre-Columbian civilizations, he had written in his final entry. But then the notes abruptly stopped, leaving only questions behind. Miss Gray, I presume. Captain David Roston removed his hat respectfully as he approached her table in the hotel dining room. His military bearing and piercing blue eyes commanded attention, but Elizabeth noticed the worry lines etched around them. I believe you knew my brother James, he continued, producing the familiar notebook. As they compared their information, Elizabeth felt a growing excitement about the archaeological possibilities, while David's concern for his missing brother deepened with each shared detail. Your brother may have discovered the burial site of a great shaman chief, Elizabeth explained, spreading ancient maps across the table. These artifacts he described, gold ornaments, ceremonial knives, sacred stones, they're exactly what we'd expect to find in such a tomb. David leaned forward intently, studying the sketches. But why would he disappear so suddenly? Elizabeth's scholarly enthusiasm was tempered by growing unease. Perhaps he uncovered something someone else wanted to keep hidden, something worth killing for. Horatio Blackstone adjusted his government-issued badge with practiced ease, the Bureau of Indian Affairs credentials providing perfect cover for his illegal activities. For 2 years, he had systematically looted sacred Comanche burial sites, selling priceless artifacts to wealthy Eastern collectors who asked no questions about provenance. His office walls displayed false reports about peaceful negotiations, while his private safe contained evidence of the most profitable grave-robbing operation in Texas territory. Red Jack McKinney spat tobacco juice into the dirt as he listened to Blackstone's latest orders. The deserter's scarred face and cold eyes reflected years of violence, making him the perfect leader for the corrupt agent's band of outcasts. Keep watching that cavalry officer and the woman, Blackstone commanded, sliding gold coins across the saloon table. They're getting too close to our operation. If they find what that geologist discovered, we'll all hang. McKinney's cruel smile suggested he had no intention of letting that happen. The network of corruption ran deeper than anyone suspected. Blackstone had cultivated relationships with unscrupulous dealers in New York and Philadelphia, men who paid premium prices for authentic Indian artifacts without caring about their bloody origins. His ledger showed profits exceeding $10,000, all built on the desecration of sacred grounds. The missing geologist James Roston had stumbled upon the main tribal treasury, and Blackstone would stop at nothing to claim that prize for himself. The cavalry captain and that university woman are asking too many questions, Blackstone muttered, pacing his office like a caged animal. Through his window, he could see David and Elizabeth examining documents at the hotel. His informants reported they planned to visit Blue Canyon within days. McKinney, he called to his lieutenant, gather the boys. If they won't stay away from the canyon, we'll make sure they never leave it. The corrupt agent's eyes glittered with dangerous determination as he planned his next move. The entrance to Blue Canyon yawned before them like a gateway to another world. David and Manuel made camp beside the towering rock formations, where scattered remnants of James's survey equipment lay half-buried in the sand. Your brother. He was here many weeks ago, Manuel observed, examining the cold ashes of an old campfire. David's heart raced as he found his brother's leather journal, its pages filled with excited notes about the most significant archaeological discovery in North America. The wind through the canyon carried an almost mystical quality. As twilight painted the canyon walls in shades of purple and gold, David studied the ancient petroglyphs carved into the stone. The symbols seemed to dance in the flickering firelight, telling stories of a civilization lost to time. Suddenly, a shadow moved among the rocks above. A young Comanche woman emerged from the darkness, her grace and beauty taking his breath away. Despite the language barrier, her intelligent dark eyes conveyed both curiosity and wariness as she approached their camp with the silent steps of a wild creature. Moonlight knelt beside the white man, using gestures and drawings in the sand to communicate. With careful strokes, she sketched the symbols her brother had copied, then pointed toward a hidden passage in the canyon wall. David watched in fascination as she recreated his brother's route through the maze of stone corridors. Her delicate fingers traced patterns that seemed to tell a story of respect and discovery, so different from the crude violations perpetrated by other white men who had invaded their sacred ground. Deep within the canyon's heart, moonlight led David to a concealed cave where James's personal belongings lay carefully arranged. His spectacles, compass, and sample bags had been preserved as if in a shrine. The young woman's eyes filled with sadness as she gestured toward the artifacts, her meaning clear. She had tried to protect the belongings of a man who had shown respect for her people's sacred places. David felt an overwhelming connection to this mysterious woman who had guarded his brother's memory with such tender care. Elizabeth arrived at the canyon just as dawn broke over the ancient walls, her archaeological equipment packed carefully in leather satchels. David introduced her to Moonlight through gestures and broken Spanish, watching as the two women studied each other with mutual respect. Despite their vastly different backgrounds, both possessed an intelligence that transcended cultural boundaries. Together, the unlikely trio prepared to explore the cave complex that had captivated James's scientific imagination and held the secrets of Moonlight's ancestors. The burial chamber took their breath away. Golden ornaments caught the lamplight like captured stars, while ceremonial knives lay arranged in precise patterns around a stone altar. James's meticulous notes described each artifact with scientific precision, but his final entries revealed growing unease about disturbing the sacred site. "I feel as though I'm being watched," he had written. "The spirits of this place seem restless, angry at the intrusion." Elizabeth's trained eye recognized the extraordinary historical significance while respecting the spiritual importance to Moonlight's people. "This is the tomb of Standing Bear, the greatest shaman of our people," Moonlight explained through a mixture of sign language and carefully chosen English words. He could speak with the spirits of earth and sky. Her voice carried reverence and sadness as she described the ancient leader's power over natural forces. Elizabeth documented everything with careful sketches, while David searched for clues about his brother's disappearance. The sacred stones seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy that made even the skeptical cavalry officer feel uneasy. The sound of approaching horses shattered the sacred silence. Through the cave entrance, they glimpsed armed men surrounding the canyon. "Blackstone's men," David whispered, recognizing the corrupt agent's distinctive black coat among the riders. Red Jack McKinney's cruel laughter echoed off the canyon walls as his gang took positions. "We're trapped," Elizabeth breathed, clutching her notes to her chest. Moonlight's eyes flashed with fierce determination as she moved to protect the burial chamber of her ancestor, knowing that her people's most sacred treasures hung in the balance of the coming confrontation. Rough hands seized Moonlight as she emerged from the cave. Red Jack McKinney's scarred face twisted with cruel satisfaction. "Well, well, what do we have here?" he sneered, binding her wrists with harsh rope. Blackstone's eyes gleamed with avarice as he surveyed the sacred burial chamber. "Make her show us the main treasury," he ordered coldly. "Every tribe has a hidden cache of their most valuable treasures." Moonlight's defiant silence only fueled McKinney's anger, but she refused to betray the location of her people's most sacred artifacts, despite the mounting threats. Hidden deeper in the cave system, David and Elizabeth watched helplessly as their companion was dragged away into the canyon's depths. "We have to do something," David whispered urgently, his military training warring with the impossible odds. Elizabeth's hands trembled as she clutched James's journal, understanding now why the geologist had disappeared. "They'll hurt her if she doesn't cooperate," she breathed. Through cracks in the rock, they could see McKinney's men setting up a brutal interrogation, their voices echoing ominously through the sacred stone corridors. Manuel appeared like a ghost from a hidden passage, his weathered face grim with determination. "I know every trail in these mountains, senor," he whispered to David. "There is another way to reach them." David's cavalry experience kicked in as he formulated a tactical plan, using the canyon's natural defenses to their advantage. "Elizabeth, can you create a distraction?" he asked. She nodded grimly, understanding the desperate nature of their situation. The stakes had never been higher. Not just Moonlight's life, but the preservation of an entire culture's sacred heritage. As night fell over the canyon, the trio prepared for their dangerous mission. David checked his service revolver while Elizabeth gathered materials for creating a diversion. "If we fail," she said quietly, "Blackstone will destroy everything sacred to these people." Manuel's eyes held the wisdom of someone who had seen too much violence. The senorita, she is brave like her ancestors, he observed. But bravery alone may not be enough against such evil men. David's jaw set with grim determination as he prepared to risk everything for the woman who had touched his heart. Under cover of darkness, David and Manuel crept through the narrow canyon passages like shadows among the ancient stones. The outlaw's campfire flickered below, in the narrowest part of the gorge, where moonlight sat bound but unbroken beside the sacred cave entrance. David's heart ached seeing her brave defiance even in captivity. Manuel pointed to the rocky ledges above, whispering, "From there, we can reach them without being seen." The sound of McKinney's harsh laughter echoed off the walls as he tormented their prisoner for information about the hidden treasury. Elizabeth struck a match to the dry brush she had gathered, watching as flames caught and spread rapidly through the canyon's vegetation. The orange glow illuminated the ancient petroglyphs, as smoke billowed upward, creating chaos in the outlaw camp. "Fire! Fire in the canyon!" shouted one of Blackstone's men as several bandits rushed to prevent the blaze from spreading to their supplies. The diversion worked perfectly, drawing attention away from the cave entrance where moonlight remained under lighter guard, giving David and Manuel their chance to strike. David dropped silently from the rock ledge, landing behind Red Jack McKinney just as the brutal outlaw raised his hand to strike Moonlight again. "That's enough," David growled, tackling the bigger man to the ground. They rolled in the dust, exchanging fierce blows as Moonlight watched with frightened eyes. McKinney's knife flashed in the firelight, but David's military training gave him the advantage. Meanwhile, Manuel cut through the ropes binding Moonlight's wrists, freeing her to scramble toward the safety of the sacred cave, where her ancestors' spirits seemed to guide her steps. Seeing his plan collapsing, Blackstone desperately lit a stick of dynamite, intending to seal the cave and destroy all evidence of his crimes. "If I can't have the treasure, nobody can," he screamed in madness. The explosion shook the entire canyon, sending tons of rock cascading down. David threw himself over Moonlight, shielding her from the falling stones as the ancient burial chamber partially collapsed around them. Through the dust and debris, Elizabeth saw David's still form protecting the woman he loved, while Blackstone lay buried beneath the rubble of his own greed. Moonlight worked tirelessly through the long nights, applying traditional healing poultices to David's injured body. Her grandmother's ancient remedies, combined with her deep knowledge of medicinal herbs, slowly brought him back from the edge of death. "You saved our sacred place," she whispered in English, her voice filled with gratitude as she changed his bandages. The cavalry officer's blue eyes flickered open, focusing on her gentle face with wonder. Despite the pain racking his body, David felt a profound peace knowing that Moonlight was safe, and their bond had deepened through shared sacrifice. Elizabeth's urgent telegrams to Washington created a storm of controversy in the corridors of power. Her detailed reports of Blackstone's corruption and the systematic looting of sacred sites demanded immediate federal intervention. "The Bureau of Indian Affairs must be held accountable," she wrote to her contacts at the Smithsonian. Within days, federal investigators arrived in San Angelo, armed with warrants and determined to clean out the nest of corruption that had festered under Blackstone's leadership. The scandal reached all the way to the Capitol, exposing a network of illegal artifact trafficking. Chief White Eagle arrived with a war party of 20 warriors, their painted faces stern with the expectation of battle. But when he saw David recovering under his daughter's tender care, and Elizabeth protecting the sacred artifacts with scholarly reverence, his weathered features softened with surprise. "These white people are different," he observed to his war chief. Through careful negotiation and Moonlight's translation, Elizabeth explained their desire to preserve rather than exploit the canyon's cultural treasures. The old chief began to see possibilities for cooperation rather than conflict. As David's strength slowly returned, his feelings for Moonlight blossomed into something deeper than gratitude. Despite the vast cultural differences between them, their souls seemed to recognize each other across the divide of two worlds. "I want to stay here," he told Elizabeth one evening, watching Moonlight gather evening primrose by moonlight. "This place, these people, they've become part of me." Elizabeth smiled knowingly, seeing how love had transformed the stern cavalry officer. The community of San Angelo, witnessing their heroism, began to embrace the unlikely partnership between the three brave souls who had risked everything for justice. The federal government's proclamation establishing Blue Canyon National Reserve marked a new era of cooperation between two cultures. Elizabeth stood proudly beside the official delegation as they signed the documents making the Comanche tribe the official guardians of their ancestral heritage. This preserve will protect these sacred sites for future generations, declared the federal commissioner. Chief White Eagle nodded solemnly, understanding that his people's spiritual legacy would finally be respected rather than exploited. The canyon's ancient stones seemed to whisper approval of this historic moment. Elizabeth accepted the position of chief archaeologist with enthusiasm, knowing her work would honor both scientific discovery and cultural preservation. Her first official report detailed the extraordinary significance of the shaman's burial chamber, while emphasizing the need for respectful study. These artifacts tell the story of a sophisticated civilization, she wrote to the Smithsonian. Her office in the new research station overlooked the canyon, where petroglyphs danced in the morning light, a daily reminder of the responsibility she carried to bridge two worlds through understanding and respect. The wedding ceremony blended Christian and Comanche traditions in a celebration that symbolized hope for the future. David, dressed in his finest cavalry uniform, stood beside Moonlight, who wore both her grandmother's sacred wedding dress and a simple gold ring. Pastor Williams from San Angelo performed the Christian rites, while Chief White Eagle conducted the ancient tribal ceremonies. The townspeople and tribal members watched with wonder as two hearts united across cultural boundaries, proving that love could indeed conquer the divisions that had long separated their peoples. A year later, David found his brother James alive and well in a distant settlement, where the geologist had been helping treat fever victims during a devastating epidemic. "I couldn't leave those people to die," James explained, embracing his brother with tears in his eyes. The reunion was joyful, but David knew his true home lay in Blue Canyon with Moonlight. As deputy sheriff, he helped maintain peace between settlers and tribal members, while Moonlight's medical practice combined traditional healing with modern medicine. Their love story had become legend, proving that understanding and respect could bloom even in the harsh frontier.